We are recording.
All right, so basically what we have here is a true to scale coupler. So it's a perfect 1:160 replica of a Type E coupler. We can demonstrate how to uncouple them. So basically we just kind of tap them with a sharp object kind of at the joint. They just pop right apart. And then automatic coupling, like really low force automatic coupling. So they couple reliably and very smoothly, as you can see. Once they're coupled, one of the major benefits versus traditional end scale couplers is the amount of slack the joint has. This is roughly 3 to 4 scale inches of slack in this joint versus, you know, roughly 1.5 feet, so 18 inches of slack in a traditional microtrains joint. With respect to reliability, one of the things these guys do is, you know, you put couplers under draft buff draft in a corner. It's one of the biggest torture tests you can put to a coupler. So that's, draft is when the train's pulled, buff is when the train's compressed. So by shaking it here, I'm putting this coupler joint under draft buff draft, and especially on a gradual corner entry, or even in a corner, draft buff draft events can cause uncoupling with traditional microtrains couplers. So if I kind of compare that, we put these, and these are microtrains cars. You can see the amount of, you know, that's basically 18 scale inches of slack in that joint. And we put it into a draft buff draft event on a corner. They didn't have to really try too hard. You know, every time it's going to uncouple. So the other thing that these couplers do that traditional couplers don't is, you can see this, you know, and the car's kind of going into a corner. We put the train under buff. See how the couplers slip out of alignment. So they shift to one side of the box completely. And this can cause operational problems, like if you're running with helpers and DPUs, corners, they'll derail more readily, even with body mounts, just because the couplers are no longer aligned. So you push the force and it starts to try pushing cars off the tracks. With the scale head design, because the coupler joint stays tight, the couplers stay aligned even when I'm putting them under buff through corners. And that just makes things operationally much more reliable when you're dealing with grades or helpers or DPUs or that sort of more advanced operation scenarios. So that's, and obviously the appearance speaks for themselves, right? Like the perfect 1:160 scale.
But you lose the magnetic uncoupling.
You do lose magnetic uncoupling. That is what you do lose. And the other thing you lose is obviously they're not going to be compatible with traditional coupler designs just because of the scale size difference. So, you know, they only couple to themselves, and they do couple to the microtrains true scale as well. But that coupler isn't a particularly popular one, but if you do have some true scale couplers, they actually couple to those just fine. But as you can see, obviously, just because of that size differential, they will not couple to traditional microtrains or any other end scale coupler of a knuckle design.
Okay.
The other thing that they're kind of really reliable with, and that people wonder, okay, because they have a scale head, how are they going to be on uneven track? And it's a legitimate question, because, you know, there's functionally less gathering height range than a traditional coupler. What I have here is an example where I have 3 microtrains covered hoppers, and the one in the middle is on its own piece of track that I've shimmed up with some pieces of paper. So you can see that it's up about half a rail height in terms of, you know, the difference. And it's shimmed up equally, right? Because it's on its own piece of track, and these tracks are right on the table, and the piece of track in the middle is shimmed up. And you can see what happens if we put stress on this train. So, you know, I'm pulling on the height gauges on either end, but you can see that even with an unequal amount of unevenness, that the traditional coupler joint slips before mine does. And that's because of how the couplers are manufactured and how they're designed. But you end up, you get this, like, you know, sorcery where you have scale size couplers that are actually more reliable than traditional couplers on uneven joints.
Okay. So I got to replace my fleet.
Okay.
And How am I going to do that?
Okay, so let's start with, you know, there's simplistically two scenarios where some cars, the box is a separate part on the model. Right, so on some models, and these are a recent production, these are the OVR trains, trash gondolas, and these cars, the box is a completely separate part. Or on this Bowser hopper, the box is a completely separate part. Or on this recent production Intermountain cement cars, these just came out, box is a separate part. So if the box is a completely separate part, you can replace the box with one of my boxes, and my box basically gives you like a really good scale appearance where the box is, you know, narrow in width. I call it a scale box. Depends on the car if it's truly scale width or not, but it's awfully close if it's not. And then it gives you like a really good, you know, freight car end profile for your couplers, and you know, you have lots of clearance for the truck because the box isn't taking up room, so there's room for the wheels. So if you can replace the box, or even on these more modern outline cars like these Microtrains Plate F box cars, again separate box, replace the whole box. Or these Aurora Miniatures Plate F box cars, same deal. These have long shank couplers installed in them. You can see the shank length is there. The couplers come in 3 different lengths of shank. So I label them short, medium, long. Basically the relationship is in the short, it's like a 10-15 from a pivot post to back of knuckle length. The mediums actually are halfway in between, and the longs are like a 10-16 in terms of the pivot length to knuckle back. So if you can replace the box, I sell them with a box kit with all the various parts for that. The box kit also includes an extra little hat part that fits on the top of the box that shims the box out to a 10-15 width and height. So, like for example, on this Microtrains Plate F car, the hat's installed on the box because it had a technically a 10-16 box installed in it originally. So when it's replaced with mine, I install the hat, and that makes the box the correct height, so the coupler's still at height when you're done. Another example being these Intermountain cars. These cars actually came with 10-15 type boxes on them and washers to raise the car height. Literally, brand new car came with washers to sort kind of coupler height with separate boxes. So I removed the washers because, you know, who wants higher riding cars, and then just installed the box, in this case without the hat, and it basically meant that I didn't need the washer anymore, and now I have an aesthetically better box installed. So the hat gives you some flexibility in terms of how you work with my box and in terms of body mount conversions. Now that's one piece of the puzzle, but as we're probably aware, there's a lot of models nowadays that come with an integrated box, where the model, like the box is one piece with the model. You can't remove the box assembly. You have to convert the coupler in the existing box. So in those scenarios, we use this thing called the universal retrofit shim, and this is a little tiny brass plate that actually gets glued into the box because it forms the spring splitter, which is a function of how these couplers actually mechanically work. So this little glue-in part has a splitter part, and it fits into an existing box. There's an example here, one installed in this Microtrains mill gondola. So the splitter shim has been glued into the box, and then the coupler assembly goes into the box then. So I can just kind of show how that goes. Here's a coupler assembly, and I'll demonstrate how to assemble a coupler here in a second as well, but this is an assembled coupler. The spring's mounted to the coupler at this point, goes into the box, and the idea is to get the spring perfectly centered over the tab on the back of the splitter shim here. And you can mechanically start to see how this works now, where if I pull the coupler to one side of the spring is being compressed and the other side of the spring's going under tension, or vice versa. And mechanically, that's how this works. This is a patent pending design. It's completely novel, so it's a whole new way to spring a coupler. But it basically lets you have really low force automatic coupling, no slinky operation, and a very flexible install model. So like an example, these are brand new. I converted this right here on the show floor. These are the new Athearn acid tank cars. These models just dropped, and they come with McHenry couplers, and Athearn doesn't provide any way to convert these to microtrains, because if you want to install microtrains coupler in this box, you can't, because the box has no pin slots for the microtrains coupler.
Okay.
So even if you want to put a microtrains coupler in this car, you can't, but you can install mine, because my design doesn't need pin slots, and it opens up a whole bunch of installation scenarios, because I don't need pin slots. You have way thinner tops, no box top at all, so you basically eliminate the need for offset shanks as well. So you can install them in offset shank scenarios that traditionally you need for microtrains, because it needs that box top there for the pin slot in the top of the coupler. No, I don't need pin slot, so I can basically have a flat top box or no box top at all, and fitting into like cattle locomotives. There's certain scenarios where that comes in handy. But this is an example where I'm installing into using the same glue and shim into this this Athearn acid tank, and it's now converted to an impossible coupler, and you know, with the aesthetics speaking for themselves. One of the major differences, aside from just the coupler head itself looking really good, because it does, and you can weather them. So in this case, these are painted and weathered so that it really makes them pop. One of the major differences is just, you know, you can see here, I'm just going to do a comparison here. So these are two tangent hoppers on the outside, and there's a Rapido hopper in the middle, but you can see that identical models, the difference in the couple distance between the cars. So this joint is a scale couple distance joint versus this joint, which is a traditional N-scale coupler joint, and you can obviously compare and contrast how those couple joints look.
Does that change minimum radius?
So you think, well, you think it should, but it really doesn't. And so here's an example of that. So here we have, you know, this is a Kato NW2 connected to two Intermountain 40-foot box cars with my scale box coupler installed in the scale box, so it has a scale width box as well, and they're coupled together, and this is actually, just because of how the box layout works, a little bit tighter than prototype couple distance. I mean, it's actually a hint tighter than it should be, and this will still go around this 6-inch corner. And see, I can get the locomotive under power here if you give me a second. Just bear with me for a second. It has not been connected here for a bit.
Engine driver?
Yeah, this is Y throttle on an iPad, but I have it. Yeah, exactly. And anyway, I didn't have my Android phone. I usually have dedicated, but anyway, digress. Here we go. Track power on. Here we go. Now, obviously, if you're trying to put an auto rack around a 6-inch corner, there's nothing about my couplers that's going to you know, solve that problem for you. But the gist of it is, if it goes around a corner now, even with scaled couple distance, or even closer to scale couple distance, it'll go around a corner tomorrow or more. So no, you don't need huge gaps between your cars. Now, I mean, this is really, really tight, but and I'm not advocating operations on 6-inch corners, but just because, sure. Break the joint there. So basically the gist of it is, if it goes around your corners now with traditional couplers, it'll go around with mine. That's kind of what I tell people in terms of corners. I mean, in this case, I have these passenger cars, I have super tight. They don't have operating diaphragms. So these, you know, full-length passenger cars will go around about 18-inch corners at this rate. Maybe let's call it 20. But, you know, they certainly won't go around 15 or smaller at this coupled distance. But you can see just how incredibly tight the coupled distance is on these passenger cars. And again, you know, you have almost no slack. So, but these will go through all the number 6s on this demo layout.
How do you get those uncoupled?
These guys you can't. This guy, because they're so tight and the diaphragm's there, I can't even get the pin through. So in this case, you have to lift them apart. That's all you can do in this case.
Need to get like an L-shaped pin or something.
Yeah, I mean, I have some ideas about how to solve this particular scenario, but in that particular passenger car scenario, you have to lift the car at this point.
Okay, so you sell it with the box, you sell it without the box with the universal adapter.
That's correct.
I hope we can be heard over the guy on the speaker. Let's just wait. We'll close at 4.
Close at 4.
It's 4.
It is 4. 5 minutes.
Okay.
So, yes.
How do you sell them?
So they sold in basically, the launch product line is 6 products. So it's short shank, medium shank, long shank with the box, or short shank, medium shank, long shank with the universal glue and shim, which you use for adapting existing boxes.
Okay.
In the not too distant future, I'll have the adapter for Microtrain's truck part for sale, as well as a line of locomotive type boxes as well that are more kind of full 10-15 outline. Actually, it's what is installed in this Kato NW2 is an early pre-production example. And in this case, absolutely no modification of the model at all, like a Microchains installer where you have to file it out. It just goes right in, and this guy's perfect height. So I'll have a line for Kato locomotives, as well as, you know, more of a pure standard 1015, which fits a lot of Atlas or a lot of other locomotives that had like kind of standard 1015 type boxes in them. Now you can convert locomotives right now though, right out the get-go, using exactly this Atlas locomotive is a good example where the back box is actually converted in place using the universal retrofit shim. In the box, it's then mounted in the locomotive. Same thing actually with the Scale Trains ST40-2, where it's the same, you know, 1015 style box, but I've just installed the retrofit shim into the 1015 style box. Sure, even though it's a separate box, you can still use the retrofit in that separate box. There's examples like, I'm just gonna unpack this guy quick.
And while you're doing that, it looks like the coupler height gauge, you just replace the Microtrains with
replace the Microchains coupler with my coupler. My coupler box is designed so that it actually fits into a 1055 gauge, and you then get the correct height at that point. And it's the same, you know, obviously you're trying to stick to standards, so it's the same MRH NTS center line height with my couplers. On this Arnold SW1, again, a good example where this isn't a standard 1015 type box, it's actually narrower. So in order to convert this model, again, I'm using the universal retrofit part installed in the original Arnold box to convert this style of coupler box over.
Okay.
And you know,
so are these available now?
So there's pre-orders at the launch dealer right now, Credit Valley Railway in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. And it'll be in American retailers as well very shortly. And they should start shipping as early as next week from Credit Valley at least, and probably a few weeks out from American retailers as well.
So what's the suggested retail?
Suggested retail in US dollars, $9.99 for any one of the 6. And that includes 2 pairs of couplers.
So 4 couplers.
For 4 couplers for retail $9.99. You know, you'll probably see some discounting from some people from that, but in that range. And if you really, really, really want to go all in, 250 pairs or more, I'm selling them direct in those lots in bulk quantities as well, for those that are really keen.
All right. Any last notes?
No, I just really hope that at least for some subset of the N-scale community, they, you know, I think really appreciate the fact they have a new option that's you know, true to scale and, you know, operates better. So for some people, it's a real game changer for the scale.
Okay, that just got wiped out. All right, let's go over that last notes again.
Anyway, so if you're looking for a coupler that's true to scale and operates better than your existing N-scale couplers, this really deserves a look.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.